Happening, Scott?
Hi, everybody. We are going to get started momentarily. Mark will be joining us shortly. He is on our way and en route. He's about 16 minutes out, but we've got the star of the show here, Nick. So we'll get started in just a few moments.
I think they changed names of it. I think that bank probably had
That's what I wondered.
reservations on the Chime name. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was no affiliation between the two.
Well, not next to Scott.
Nikki again said how much she likes you, and it's not like even close.
Oh, me?
Oh,
Oh, I looked at Nick.
I was gonna say, what did I say?
I gotta just catch the spirit. Let's now give some wine.
The last few days.
About who?
I did. About me.
Things.
That sounded questionable. It was questionable. Definitely said that he liked my husband more than me.
I just said.
Thank you, Nick, for doing this.
Welcome. All right, so we'll go ahead and, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. I know a couple other people messaged that they were on their way in. So, Mark asked me to go over, basically listing presentation. So, and I guess, first thing and foremost, a listing presentation to me isn't just the booklet that you kind of go over at a listing preview appointment, whatever you guys call it. It's more the entire thing all wrapped up. So I do have a copy of the booklet that I use, but that only really accounts for probably like 5, maybe 10% of everything that you're going to want to do there. So what I wanted to do was walk through the entire process with you guys from the time that you get to the door up to the time that hopefully they sign off on paperwork or tell you to get lost. So one or the other. So I'll go ahead and pass this around real quick. This is just a copy of the book that I threw together whenever we switched over here. But biggest thing, I guess, is, what is a listing presentation? So with that, it's a way of meeting up with the sellers to go over what you have to offer, whether it be as an individual agent or as a team, and what to expect with the process in working with you guys. So beyond that, it's best to be able to go on these things and have it fully rehearsed and fully memorized. So I always kind of thought of it more as like almost like a performance kind of a thing, but at the same time, you're answering questions at that point. So the more routine you can make something like this, the better off you're going to be able to do, especially if you're working on one of the higher volume teams or something like that. So listing presentation I used to give was typically 2, maybe 3 times a day when things were a little bit busier. So it was always key to make sure that that thing was pretty much dialed in. That way, even if I was having a bad day or something, it still came across the exact same as it would any other day there. So what does it contain? So you guys will see in the booklet over there, the one that I have, honestly, it's a little bit wordy. I want to go ahead and revise it a little bit, but that's important to keep in mind that something like this, the form that you bring with you should be a living document. It should be something that is constantly seeing revisions. It's never fully completed. Whether you do it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a year, whatever that may be, go through it and just kind of update things, not just the team section with who's on your team, who's working with you or anything like that. Actually read through it, script it, and almost give the presentation to yourself a couple of times a year so that you kind of know how that's coming off and what you can change to make it a little bit more palatable to all different types of people there. So the big things that I cover in mine are going to be the programs that are offered, some of the stats, a little bit on the history, and then I also go into things like what they need to know about me as the agent. So a little bit more personality, the history, things that are a little bit more personable. These are not the things that they're going to see on Facebook. They're not going to see, how many homes I sold in a given month or whatever that may be. So you're also going to want to go over what they should expect in working with you, all the team members that are going to be in contact with them, what that process is going to look like. Even feel free to dig into what the time frames are going to look like with your what you expect as far as them being on the market, going under contract, what that looks like, pending status, how long should that take, and all the basic steps along the way up until the time that they get to the closing there. So one question I always got was, how long should it be? Does this need to be like a full 2-3 hour thing, or should it be like 15 minutes? Really, it kind of depends on the client at that point. And I'll probably refer to the DISC profile a few times. Is everybody here familiar with that? Like the DISC kind of thing? Okay. So the different personality types are really going to judge how long that process needs to take. If you are meeting with a high D individual, it's probably going to be real quick. They're not going to have a lot of questions. They are basically going to look at you and say, what's the price? What's the commission? And go from there. So to where a I or an S, they might be a little bit more apt to be reserved, not ask as many questions. It's going to be a little bit more of a get to know you kind of a conversation at that point. So first thing that I always did was I made a phone call. So take down as much information as you can with the seller at that point. I would always make a note of what I felt that their DISC profile would be, just so that I kind of knew how to talk to them going into it. You can ask things like the furnace, how old is that? How old's the roof? Real basic questions that allow you to gather the best applicable comps as well. So get to know the client, get to know their type, get to know their goal, and most important, get to know the pain point, which is why they are selling. That is going to be huge to know exactly what the reason is behind them putting that home up for sale. And I think we all kind of learned this year that it's a lot of death, divorce, diapers, all that good stuff. So one other thing that I always made sure hey, how are you, Elizabeth? Wanted to make sure that everybody that was a decision maker was going to be there. So if it's a trust situation, make sure that all of the trust members are there. Make it so that when you are getting ready to leave that presentation, everybody, if they choose to, can sign off on your documents right then and there. The more you can be prepared to have those documents signed at the actual presentation, the better off your chances are. The minute you leave that presentation without signed documents, your chances of actually landing them probably cut in half, somewhere around there. It just gives a lot more time for them to talk over things they like, things they didn't like, different agents, and possibly even call in new agents if there was something there that they didn't quite agree with. Or if something wasn't fully explained to them. Big thing, I always circle back on, do you have any extra questions? Do you have any needed information? Make sure that when you leave there, you are comfortable with the situation and everything that you guys talked about there. So, strategize for the client. I always say this, look up your client on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you got to do. Get to know them before you walk in that door. The more prepared that you can be in this situation, better off it's going to end up going for you. So, know the areas of the book that you're going to go over with them to focus on and what to skip. So if it's a high D individual, they're really probably not going to put a lot of attention into your reviews or anything that's like the feel good kind of stuff in there. They're going to focus more on what the results were, what the process is looking like, what to expect, and a lot of numbers there. So confirm the morning of the appointment. Do not ask them, are we still on for today? Tell them that you are still on for today. They will correct you if something came up or if they forgot. Tell them, hey, can't wait to see you. I'm going to be there today right around 1:30. Let me know if you have any questions beforehand. So when you get to the appointment, this is kind of where everything actually starts. So I always follow the rule of knock, don't ring the doorbell, and certainly don't call or text from the driveway saying that you're there. The more personable that you can be, the more friendly that you can be, better off it's going to end up starting for you, and the better it's going to end up going throughout the process there. So, oh, okay. So with your first conversation, make sure that you are basically just asking questions. They don't need to know about you at this point. You need to learn about them. And if there's one thing that most people like talking about, it's themselves. So let them go ahead and do that. Ask them a lot of questions about why they are looking to sell, what the goal is for them. Don't ask dead end questions either. Yes or no questions. If that's what you can get as an answer, that's probably what you're going to get as an answer. Get them talking, ask them more pointed questions about certain topics there. So, goal number one should always be to build rapport with the client. So I would always make it a point to take a tour of the home first thing, walk through the home with them and ask them to tell you everything about the home. So, hey, it's a trust thing. What was grandma's favorite room in the home? What are some of the updates that you know of? If it's their personal home, where's your favorite spot in the home? Show me off all these different things, get them talking a little bit so that by the time that you sit down and actually have those conversations about the comps and everything, you're pretty well prepared and you know exactly how that home falls in line when it's compared to the other homes that have sold in the area. So ask and listen, save pieces of information. This is pretty key too. If they give you one little piece of information that you can save and use for later to show that you are paying attention, actually does go a long way. So try and remember names, try and remember different events that's going on with them, look at pictures, things like that. Anything that you can do to make it a little bit more personable, that's going to end up helping. So set the stage with what to expect in the next part of the presentation. So at the end of any walkthrough, I would always tell the people, okay, so at this point, what I want to do is go ahead and review the comparable sales in the area with you guys. I brought a few of them with me here. They're probably homes that you guys have seen already on the market, but I just want to do a little bit of give and take on where your home falls in line with all these properties. Because truth of the matter is, they've probably either already been watching all of the home sales in the area and they probably know them better than you actually do, or the last agent that they just met with probably brought a lot of the same comps at that point. So I do actually also offer a second walkthrough if it's a home where they're asking a lot of questions on, hey, what should we do to get the home ready? Perfect. Tell you what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this home the first time. You're going to tell me everything about this home. We're going to sit down at the dining room table. we're going to go over not just the comparable sales in the area, but also the process that we like to use to go ahead and get your home sold. If all this stuff lines up at that point, we'll do a second walkthrough and I'll give you my opinion on what exactly I would do if this was my home to sell. So set the stage and kind of leave that nugget for, hey, if everything goes well and if you choose to use me as your realtor, we do a second walkthrough and we go over everything at that point. So when you do sit down at the table, make sure this is kind of the time where you take back that control. It is not questions for the sellers or anything like that time. This is where that presentation kind of starts. So you're going to explain the goal. You're going to take control of the actual conversation there. So explain to them what you plan on doing. Hey, I just like to take a couple of minutes here, go over this booklet. It's probably going to be a lot of information that's just going to kind of pass over. But at the same time, if you have any questions, stop me. We'll go over this stuff. This gives you a really good idea on what to expect with working with our team here. So start into the booklet at that point and find whatever rhythm works for you guys. There's no right or wrong way to put that booklet together. Thank you. No right or wrong way to put the booklet together. It's basically going to be however you're comfortable talking to the client. So I always like to start it off with, hey, these are some basic stats here. This is a little bit about myself. This is a little bit about the team. This is a little bit about what makes us different. Putting those things first and foremost builds some rapport with the client for you specifically, builds rapport for the team, and it sets the stage for what they could expect as far as those reactions go once they hit the market and what the possible outcomes could end up being. So another thing that I always do is I ask who else they're interviewing. So it does make for a really uncomfortable question, but at the same time, if you make it seem like it's not uncomfortable to you, they're a little bit more apt to tell you exactly who they're meeting with. And if you are always finding yourself in the competitive situation, it's usually a lot of the same different agents there. So you're going to go up against the same teams. You're going to know their strengths, their weaknesses. It's not to say that they're actual strengths or weaknesses. It's just how that you can convey to the client why your system might be a little bit better than someone else's for their personality type, or tweak what you might be able to do for this client, knowing that the other team or other agent might not be able to fulfill that exact same need. So
Nick, are you asking that as in the pre-qual conversation or at the?
I will touch on it in the pre-qualification. I will ask them, are you interviewing with other realtors? If they say, yes, we are, I will say, okay, great. Who? 9 times out of 10, at that point, they will not tell you.
Yeah.
So, and I usually follow up with that just to kind of ease that question off. I just say, oh, we just like to know who you're meeting up with, or at least how many, because I always like to go first or last. It's completely up to you which one you want to be. I've heard studies done on both of them being best. I always had more luck being first. So, but it kind of comes down to however comfortable you guys are. They usually won't say over the phone, but if you do ask it at the table, you sit there patiently and silently, someone's going to talk first. And it's usually them, and they're going to say, well, we met with so-and-so. Okay, great. Were they able to go over how their team concept works and how it might be a little bit different than ours? Always give a reason for why you're asking these questions. You're not just being nosy. You're doing this for the client so that you can explain to them better what exactly is going to be going on. So you got to know when to stop. This was something that took me a while because I would want to go through my entire presentation with every single client. Probably a quarter of the time, I didn't need to actually do that. The client was already on board with what I was saying, or, they had already completely lost interest, and we should probably move on to comps at that point. Read the room, read your client, kind of know from body language what they're telling you and when to talk, when not to talk, or when to ask a question to make it a little bit more interactive at that point. Keep it fresh and interactive. That's going to be key too. Throw in some questions in there. Throw in some reiterations. Hey, you understand what I'm talking about. You did so-and-so at this point. Tell me a little bit about that. Anything to liven up the conversation so that it's not just 15 to 20 minutes of monotonous talking. This needs to be flawlessly rehearsed. The more you can get into a rhythm, the more that this can just be second nature to you. You can rattle off every statistic that's in that booklet, every single little thing, you know exactly which page is coming up. The metric for me was I wanted to be able to do it with the booklet upside down. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to touch on every single thing while I'm sitting across the table from them, if that were the situation. Another thing that I had been told was, if at all possible, don't sit across the table from them. Sit on a corner so that you feel like you're more on their side. So little tips and tricks have always kind of helped out a little bit here and there. How much weight they actually carry, can't say for sure. So know that this is the difference between you and everyone else. Know that you are probably meeting up with these people and they more than likely have met with at least one other agent at that point, unless it's, you know, your aunt or your best friend, something like that. This is not all about the personal relationship things. This is for Zillow call, realtor call, sign call in. They heard of you through a friend, something like that. This is where you really need to showcase yourself versus those other agents. And I can tell you 100%, as long as you're showing up with paperwork and something prepared, you are better than 90% of the people that are out there that they've probably met up with. It is astounding how many people go in with absolutely no information ready to go for these clients. Even some of them that'll say, you know, hey, we'll do a second meeting, and that's when we'll go over comps, things like that. I've never found that to be beneficial because sometimes you don't get a chance at a second meeting. They went with the person that was fully prepared on meeting number one there. So each section of the booklet that you go over with them should have different parts of it that apply to all the different disc profiles. So have one that's fully stats for your C-type people. Have one that's reviews for your I's or your S's. And then have some of them that just drafts exactly what they could expect working with you guys for the more direct types of personalities out there. Know the client, focus and adapt if you need to. So if things just aren't quite exactly what you had expected them to, figure out what you need to do to switch things up a little bit and play with it until you can see visually that the client is more interested or they're connecting a little bit more with you. Skip ahead again, skip ahead if you need to, skip through the booklet if you need to. Don't feel like you have to go through every single page of it. Find a natural flow for yourself and how to present this thing. So, like I said, there's no real, hey, you need to focus on stats first. You need to do introductions first. Figure out whatever's comfortable for you. A lot of it's going to come down to your cadence, your rhythm, and how you want that conversation to be directed to the people. You're going to end typically with going over the comps. So something in line with just a real quick roundup of everything that you talked about right before you go ahead and do that. That's going to be best. A lot of times you'll get cut off right after you go over this presentation. You'll say any kind of questions before you can go over the comps. People are going to say, what's my house worth and how much are you charging to sell it? Great. We're going to go into that next and start delving into that. Typically, I would not go over the commissions, the rates and all that stuff until you fully comp the house, just to evaluate exactly what it's worth, because then you're able to go over that price point with them, gives them a better idea of what to expect as far as the final dollar goes. And you're actually able to go over what the competing buyer agency comps look like in their area there. So it makes that conversation a little bit easier for them to digest at that point. So before comps, give time to breathe. This was the process. This was your showcase. What is different about you? Do not move forward unless you are confident that they understand the information that you have just gone through. So end with, I know that was a lot of information. What kind of questions do you have? Allow them to answer whatever questions that they might have. This is the time to go over those before you delve into the financials. So personality type, again, is going to dictate what their expected response is to that exact question. A D, no questions, hurry up, get to the numbers, specifically the price and the commission. An I, probably more impressed than anyone. They might have a question or two, They're almost certainly going to be questions about something you have already covered, so feel free to reiterate at that point. An S is usually going to be pleased. They're more likely to have a few good questions. And a C type personality is going to have so many questions. And it is going to be about every little thing that you just went over. That's when you know that this appointment's probably going to run long. It's going to be an hour and a half, 2-hour conversation at that point. So how you feel at the end of the presentation is probably the best reflection on how that presentation went. So if you feel like you really nailed it, you did a really great job, then your confidence is going to kind of shine through at that point, and the client is going to pick up on that. If you stuttered your whole way through it, apologize, make a joke about it, and try and move on at that point. So as far as the comps go, I'm not going to tell you guys how to comp out properties. You guys know how to do that. Everybody has their different way of doing it. I would say to always explain your process beforehand. So I usually say, hey, doing probably a similar thing to what most of the agents that you've already met up with have done. I like to keep mine in a little bit of a tighter radius rather than including the entire school district or the entire city of Canton. I'm going to focus on within a quarter of a mile. We're only going to go back about 90 days or about 180 days. It's not to say that that's exactly what the other agents that they met up with did. It's to allude to what you are doing and placed out there that maybe these comps are a little bit more accurate than the ones that someone else went over. If they're all the exact same comps, they're going to know. If they're a little bit different comps, it's going to reiterate that you have taken the time to prepare something like this. So always print your stuff off. Do not take an iPad. Do not take a laptop and just turn it around for them. The more stuff that you can print off, the more stuff that you can leave behind at that home with your name, your contact information, better off it's going to be for those reasons. Another thing that I like is when you've got all of these different documents that you can spread out on the table, it makes it a little bit more interactive and it makes it look like you put way more time and effort into preparing something like this. Spread it all out over the table, point, slide things over to them, let them follow along as you go over all these comps. That's going to really show to them that you took your time on researching this, and it's going to validate that final number, that final range that you give them. It's going to kind of sink in their head a little bit more that way. So go house by house, allow them to follow along. So I'll usually give them the packet of information, the buyers with the photos at that point, because I want them to see how the updates translate to their home. So they'll be flipping through that and I'll go over, hey, this one, give and take, it's got a little bit more square footage, but we've got it by 1 bedroom. So we can kind of equalize those two out. We've got a little bit bigger of a lot, but they've got a 3-car garage. We only have a 2-car. And notice, always use the term we. It's not you. It's never you. We are a team at this point. Even though you have not signed off on paperwork, we are working together at this table at this moment. I want them to see what this is going to look like for the next 3-6 months, however long the listing contract is. So bullet points definitely help. I always write notes to the side on the agency full that I've printed off for myself so that I know exactly what to go over with each different home. And be very factual in the differences. I don't use real vague terms like, oh, well, I like their granite countertops a little bit better than your Formica. Make it seem a little bit more factual. The upgrades in this home are typically more in line with what clients are looking for nowadays. It's not to say that their home is ugly or outdated or anything like that. It's to show that there is real value in these. And that's one of the reasons that this one should be priced higher than the home that we're evaluating right now. So always remember that the client likely knows the homes better than you, and be okay with that. Ask them questions when they bring that up. Oh, a for sale by owner just sold down the road here. It actually went for 175. That's wonderful. The system that I use, the MLS, typically shows me all of the different listings that the agents have included in here. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to take a look at that real quick. This is about the only time that I would say it's okay to grab your phone out and start looking it up. But do it while it's sitting there on the table with the client and have them point out the differences, what they think of that home. Feel free to have that conversation with them at that point. More than likely, you're gonna have all the comps that you need to in hand anyways, but every now and then there is some kind of a private sale there that maybe you didn't pick up on. So, other agents have probably also reviewed these with the client at some point if you're not going first. So keep that in mind there. And just say, okay, what did that agent say about this home? Question, where you stand in regards to what someone else is saying about the exact same home. Finalize with a range. I used to give out a very exact number. And this is another one of those things where I've heard different things from different people. Heard some people say that when you give an exact number, you seem more confident in your information and you seem like you have researched this more. I've found that giving them a range of about $10,000 to $15,000 is usually best, because the knee-jerk reaction of you giving them one exact number, if that is not exactly in line with what they are expecting, whether that be high, low, whatever it is, the first thought that they have is, how do we correct this? That is not the number that I was thinking. You know, if I go into a home and I have a feeling that they want 350 for it, but I know that the home is worth 330, more than likely it's going to sell for 325, somewhere around there. I'll give a range. I'll say, from what I can tell here, we would probably do well starting anywhere from 320 up to 345. And here's the reasonings. I usually try and make sure that I'm hitting some kind of a major number at that point, like a 50 or 100, because then I can go into what the difference is with the marketability of the sale of the home. So a lot of times you'll get people that they want to sell their home for $207,000, let's say. That's the number that they have researched. That's the number that they have come up with. Wonderful. There's two ways that we can get there. We can start at 200, let the market dictate if that home is actually worth that 207 there. And what we're doing at that point is we're playing off the marketability being under that 200 number. Because the minute you crest that 200,000 number, you are competing with everything up to 250. Because that's just how people search for homes at that point. It's very easy for them to understand, because more than likely they just got done doing the exact same thing. So some of them understand it a little bit better than others, and never lose a home over price. You do not pick the price that the home sells for. You are picking the price that you are marketing that home. The market is going to dictate exactly what that home is worth. So always keep that in mind. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to pick the exact number anyways. So discuss the contract terms and commissions once you've gone over the pricing of the other homes and the home. And I usually start that conversation with, as you can see here on my sheets, the buyer's agency is typically 2.5% for this area, 3% for this area. So we know that we need to be around there so that we don't short sell ourselves on that front. The fee that I charge for listing the home is such and such percent. Split the two up there. That's become more basic over the last few years. We don't give, hey, commission 6%, or hey, commission's 5.5%, whatever that is. Split the two up so that they're easily digestible numbers. And if you do the two numbers separately, you're showing that there is a cost for both sides at that point. So when you're closing out with the client, revert back to the questions. So you've given all the needed information. Now the client can ask you questions or try and throw you off at that point. Following order has worked best in the past. So do you have any questions on the financials of the home or the pricing that we've gone over? Nope, everything sounds pretty good. Perfect. Do you have any questions on the expected outcome that we went over? Let's say it's a fully updated home. They've agreed at 200,000. We know that that's going to get multiple offers. I would be confident in saying I would expect this home to probably be under contract in 2 to 3 weeks at that point. I know that it's realistically probably going to be under contract within the first weekend, but I don't want to set myself up for a failure like that. So give them a quicker timeline if you know that that could be it, but set realistic expectations too. So I say, no, everything that you said sounds good. We know the outcome, and we're good to go. Ask them about their timeline. Okay, great. So in reviewing the home, I noticed that you had said that you wanted to do a couple of things. Do you think you're going to be ready this week, or is it going to maybe mean next week? They will correct you if it's months out or anything like that. So after that, wonderful. This is where the second to last question comes in. Was there anything that another agent touched on that maybe I haven't been able to address yet? Set that up and ask them very pointedly. Is there something that another agent said that maybe I'm not in line with, or maybe I forgot to go over, or maybe I can clarify why we are a little bit different on that? And then the last question, you're basically just going to say, great, I have all the paperwork with me right now, and it's easiest to do it face to face so that I can answer any questions that you might have. Do you have time to go over it? Perfect. Get going. If they say yes, congratulations, you got it. Sign off on the paperwork, get the photos scheduled, all that stuff. If you can notice some hesitation, be silent. Don't say anything. Let them say something to you. They will bring up whatever the issue is at that point. If they say no, don't hesitate to ask why. You know, no, we're just not ready to sign off on paperwork yet. Oh, okay. Is there any specific reason for that? Oh, you know, we've got to converse with so-and-so. They're gonna have a million different reasons. That's perfectly fine. Evaluate what that reason is. If it's something that you can answer and address right then and there, go for it. If not, make sure that you've got some kind of a piece of information that you can call them the next day. Set the stage up for yourself in the walkthrough of the home or in the pricing. You know, I usually say, oh, that's really interesting. Let me look into that after our appointment and I'll get back to you on that. It gives you more of a reason to follow up with them the next day, as opposed to just, hey, we had that appointment yesterday. You said you'd give me an answer today, so what are we doing? You're gonna get the same responses you got at the table at that point. So even if it's a no, rarely they're gonna tell you, no, we're not listing with you at the table there. But in the instances that they do, and even on the phone call, which is more often where you'll hear that no, ask them. You're not getting their business anyways, so ask them, what could I have done differently to have earned your business? Don't get ticked off about it. Don't let it beat you up or anything like that. Use that as a time to learn what you did wrong. I've had appointments where I actually had our ISA call because they weren't picking up my phone calls. And she told the ISA, we interviewed 4 people. We liked Nick the least. That's okay. It's not anything that I'm gonna get upset about. Maybe it was an off day. I can look at that appointment and say, you know, oh gosh, okay, this happened in the morning. That probably affected why it came off.
Teach this class then maybe?
I'll look him up. Yeah, it was probably Jose. So, but no, I mean, they will tell you what happened with it. And that's just as important to know as what went right. So always kind of make sure to ask those kind of questions. So as far as the follow-up goes, this is where you answer the question from before that you didn't have an answer for. So if you were walking through the home, hey, let me look that up. I'll get back to you, give them a call, answer that question at this time. Did you discuss everything we went over yesterday? If they had said, oh, I need to talk to my wife about it, I need to talk to my husband, whatever that's like. Did you guys have a chance to go over all that stuff? What did you think? Did you come up with any new questions? Good time for them to think of questions that maybe they didn't think of the day before. What does your week look like to get together for the paperwork? Set the stage for another meeting to get the paperwork signed. This also prompts them to answer if they will be signing off on paperwork with you. They say yes, great, you got it. Move on to getting paperwork, photos scheduled, all that good stuff. If they say no, dig in the exact same way as you would have at the table. Reiterate a lot of that stuff. So. Last thing, like I said, you're gonna be competing with a lot of the same people out there. The more research that you can do on who you're going up against, the better off you'll do in that respect. But more importantly, research the client. Know who you're about to meet up with. Know what to expect with them. Even pulling up to the house, you can kind of learn a little bit about what you're about to walk into. If there's a lot of decorations and stuff, okay, you can kind of get a feel for it's probably an S or an I, something like that. Election years makes it fairly easy to know what you're going to be dealing with too. So you can kind of look at that and say, okay, this is what I might be in for. It's not to say either way is good, bad, anything, but it allows you to focus on what areas they're most going to probably be concerned about. So, any questions on anything? Yes.
Can we go back to when you're doing your comps and
Yeah.
you're explaining where you're getting your pricing, are you more like getting it from like comparing properties and subtracting that way, or like price per square foot?
No, so at price per square foot, I don't usually dwell on too much. I'll actually use that more often in price adjustments than anything. Because if a price adjustment is needed, we're probably higher on the price per square foot anyways, and that's something that I can reiterate at that point. As far as the actual homes go, I will look for homes, bedroom count and bathroom count are two of the really important ones. Style of the home, gonna be really important, so you don't want to compare a two-story to a ranch or anything like that. Bi-levels and split levels usually comp out almost exactly the same. Colonials, will try and stick with those. Try and keep, if it's an older home, then I'm not too concerned with the age of the homes unless it's something really new, because that's going to comp out higher anyways. But if it's a new build home, I do want to try and include as many of the newer style homes as possible.
And then do you just like kind of average all the sale prices together and then you kind of take out, like if it doesn't have a bedroom, or like, what's your best practice?
To an extent, so the only one that I have like a firm number that, hey, right off the bat, this is what to expect because of this, when a home is randomly on a slab. With that, I have heard 15% is the number that you should adjust for not having a basement. For whatever reason in Ohio, people love their basements. You guys know that. I don't know why. It's a hole in the ground that attracts a lot of water, but yeah, so it's one of those things that, and 9 times out of 10, unless the entire neighborhood is a slab neighborhood, you're not gonna have some tangible number that you can assess to it. So in talking with an appraiser, he said, yeah, typically it's around a 15% difference just offhand. But even as appraisers, they have to appraise only other slab homes at that point. So it's also gonna make it tricky. So,
Get more aggressive if you're like the only listing within like a certain range?
yeah, actually, if we're the only listing in a certain range, I'm more apt to be flexible with increasing the purchase price. So there's no need, if we're not competing with anything, then that's one of those times, okay, yeah, let's start high. And a lot of times you will have clients that say, oh, I want to start at this price. Not a problem. What I'll do is I'll actually set the stage there at the appointment for, hey, totally understand. It's probably what I would do too. But I'll tell you what, if we don't have an offer within the first 10 days, and if we don't see a consistent stream of showing in the first 7 days, you're going to expect a call from me. We need to review this pricing, and maybe we need to be a little bit lower on that spectrum. It sets up, hey, we're doing what you want to do, but at the same time, we're not going to just leave this to sit and stay on the market day after day after day. Usually they're pretty receptive to that.
I've talked with a handful of agents who had a great listing appointment, brought lots of value, talked through the comps, and then get left at the altar, but it becomes clear that the client channeled all advice that was given during that session.
Mhm.
How do you provide value without giving away the farm, so to
Yeah.
speak, before they've committed?
So, and I found that most often when that happens, it's the homes where they plan on doing some things to the home to get it ready. And that's one of the reasons that I will offer a second walkthrough after our first walkthrough. If I know that I'm walking into a home where it's a trust sale and they've got, they want paint colors, they want to do flooring, they want to do all these different things. I will set the stage and say, hey, after we talk at the table, we'll go over pricing, we'll go over commissions, we'll go over what this looks like. If this is a good fit for us to work together, we'll do a second walkthrough of the home. I'll give you my opinion on everything. So it basically sets up, if we plan to work together, I will give you all of this stuff. We will go over every single little thing that you want to go over. If we're not, for that exact reason, I'm not giving you every piece of advice to kind of take and run with another agent at that point. It's not going to work every time, but every now and then it does help to kind of move the conversation along.
Yeah, you're showing the value that you will offer.
Right.
But you're creating clarity around when you'll offer it.
Yes, yeah. So I also require listing paperwork to be signed before we get the photos scheduled or anything like that. So that's another point. Hey, what does your calendar look like over the next week? Is the home gonna be ready for photos? Yeah, we're working on it right now. I don't know. We might have it ready this week. We might have it next week. Okay, why don't we tentatively set up for this upcoming Thursday? I'm gonna send you over the paperwork, look it over. As long as that's signed off on, then we can go ahead and keep that on the schedule there.
What about the scenario, hey, Nick, we just want to get you in. We want to make sure we've got a plan in place, but we have no plans of listing before school's out for the kids. How do you handle the longer time horizon? Obviously,
Yeah.
If I can get some paperwork sooner, great. If I can get listed sooner, great, but that's not how they're thinking about it. It's more of a strategy session.
Yeah.
How do you think it'll go?
At that point, it's a very watered down, like a diet version of the listing presentation. I'll go over to the home, but we will walk through it. I'll give them my recommendations on a very, very broad price at that point. I mean, we're talking like a span of $25,000, $50,000. Hey, you guys aren't thinking about selling for another 6 months or so. If it were today, I would say you're probably going to be looking right around that 250, 300 mark, depending on what you guys are going to do. But at the same time, since we're so far out, what I want to do is go ahead and set up like a monthly call with you guys so that we can go over the different listings that have come up. Pricing is going to be impacted one way or the next. We're not going to be exactly the same. So I want to know if it's going up or if it's going down. Talk to you guys here in a month and use that as a reason to consistently communicate with these people.
So when you're signing with somebody, they've agreed to work with you,
Mhm.
listing length, sometimes you come across people who are like, they only want to give you a certain amount of time, they're a little distrusting and
Yeah.
don't want to get tied down. How do you handle objections there and such?
That depends on what we've discussed as far as pricing goes. If someone is following my recommendation on price, yeah, we'll do 30, 60 days, whatever that may be, because the price that I'm giving them, I'm pretty confident in that. If they want to shoot for the moon and only do a 30-day listing, it's not that I'm going to say no, but I'm probably going to focus more on, hey, if we don't have those showings or those offers in a quicker timeline, you're going to get calls from me. Let's have a call every single week up until the point that we have a contract. And even set out at this point, this is what those calls are going to look like. If we're hitting the market at 350, at first call, we're probably going to need to look and see what that feedback looks like and possibly reduce to 340, 335, somewhere around there. I think that that'll probably do it, but if not, we need to hop on a second call. We're not going to do as drastic of a reduction, but we're still going to look into if that price needs to be adjusted at that point. Anything else?
I can keep going. Mode of follow-up, some of us are texters, some of us
Yeah.
are emailers, some of us won't talk unless we're on the phone.
Yeah.
How do you, the non-committal post-listing follow-up?
Yeah.
How are you handling that from a mode standpoint?
I usually call, I don't leave voicemails, and then I'll shoot them a text. People don't check voicemail anymore, I've found. And if they just see a missed call, 50-50 on if they call you back. So if you follow that up with a text, hey, just wanted to check in, try and leave some kind of a nugget that's going to get them to call you back. New listing just hit in the neighborhood, wanted to go over that with you real quick.
You won't believe what just happened in your neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah,
Voicemail
exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, heard the bad news, ...
Yeah, you won't believe number 2.
Yeah, just something that's going to encourage them to get back with you. Anybody else? Anybody online? That's a lot of people. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate you sitting in on this. Hopefully it was of some real value there. And if you want to go over like the booklet or anything like that, happy to share that with you. So thanks a lot.
See that booklet, they were sending.
Oh, sorry, we kept it